Hey guys, in this video I want to show you how to do fuel and burning with tyFlow Zenith. So I'm gonna create this box and I'm gonna create a tyFlow, just set up the regular bird inferno and pick the box as an emitter. It's gonna start burning by default, but I'm gonna uncheck the density and temperature and check only the fuel. Now it's gonna start emitting some fuel, and I will make it display as box so that we could see the inner workings of the box, but yeah, there's nothing interesting there. Right now I'm gonna disable the motion velocity. It's not moving at all, but otherwise it's gonna force whatever fluid is passing through the box to slow down, or if you set it to 1, it's just gonna completely stop it. But I'm gonna enable pressure. Is that enough pressure? And that's the fuel. So I'm gonna stop it somewhere around here, but I'm gonna go to the previous frame and set it to, I think it was 150 again. So it's gonna emit 150, 150, 150 is 0. Right, let me check the playback settings. Okay, real time is off. I'm gonna turn off the looping as well, and I'm gonna add a second emitter. That's gonna be the temperature that's gonna ignite this fuel. So I'm gonna press tab, create another emitter, but I created it at the top, so I might even okay, let me be a bit more specific. Fire emitter, fuel emitter, right. So it also gotta pick the sphere, because if I just imagine that the sphere is gonna emit, it's not gonna work in the software. And it starts burning. Even the pressure in the beginning is kind of blowing the flame away at first. So at this point it's burning. Now by default it's not very interesting, so let's go into the bird inferno options. So the important stuff is right here in the fuel rollout, and first off, that's the temperature that is needed to ignite the fuel. So if I lower this, so first let's just let's keep it at 2. Let's just go back and check. Now we're emitting temperature of 6. So if I want it to burn more easily, I can lower the threshold and say that, so this means that temperature that is above 2 is only going to ignite the fire, to ignite the fuel. So I'm gonna lower this threshold, so all of the voxels that have temperature above 1 are also gonna be able to ignite the fuel, and now it's gonna be easier to ignite, but I need to extend the timeline a little so that we could see better what's going on. And now it's gonna start propagating much more easily and also expanding. So here's the propagation option, and here's the pressure option, which causes the expansion. So if I just zero the pressure, no pressure, it's gonna look like this. So there's gonna be a very minimal expansion, so I can there's gonna be a very minimal propagation. Now the expansion is 0. I'm gonna increase the propagation. I should have rewinded the timeline, but here it is. So with higher propagation it looks like this. So this is how it propagates without expanding, and you can use this for propagating fuel, propagating flames across a volume of fuel, and it didn't even manage to burn it all until frame 200. By the way, here from the Inferno display operator, you can change the color of the fuel. So if you want to make it look like just a spray of airborne fuel, you can change it to a brighter color. I'm gonna talk about the rendering a bit later, so I'm just gonna go back. But in order to be able to see which is the fuel and which is the produced smoke, I'm gonna go back and just set it again to some color that is gonna be specific, that's gonna be easier to see, and then eventually we're gonna go back to a more realistic color. So here's how the propagation option works. Or of course, if it's 0, there's not going to be any propagation. So just where the temperature passes, it's going to burn the fuel and it's going to remove it from the simulation. But I think that this way it's a bit more interesting. So I'm going to keep it for this scene. Simulate until the end of the timeline. All right, and here, this thing is the amount of temperature that gets produced as it's burning. So right now it produces a lot of temperature. If I lower this, it's gonna burn with lower and gonna produce lower temperature. And beware that this is a process that is like a snowball effect. So the more temperature you produce from burning, if this temperature is high enough, it's gonna ignite more of the fuel. So yeah, now that I lowered it to 1, nothing interesting is happening. So if I go the other way around, so it was 5, if I set it to 10, it's gonna start creating more temperature, and then it's gonna cause more of the fuel to start burning. So now it's gonna get more fiery, like this. And now you can see that here the plumes are still very hot as they are rising. So if I go back to 5, at this frame 161, this is, yeah, it has not even risen that high because the temperature is low and the buoyancy does not take the whole plume upwards that quick. All right, so it's cool with a bit higher temperature though. So let me set it to 7. All right. Alright, and this is gonna start cooling off with time, but this way that we have flames and smoke intertwined, it's a bit more interesting. Alright, so the dissipation option means how fast the fuel gets depleted as it burns. So for example, if you want this fuel to be like very light and just burn off more quickly, you can set the dissipation to a higher value. And this means that just the fuel is gonna burn off instantly or almost instantly, and it's not gonna be able to produce that much heat and that much temperature, so it's just gonna disappear. Part of it, you can see that part of the fuel also gets wrapped with the smoke, and the smoke pulls it up, and it manages to save some of it from the flames. Otherwise, it was 0.9, so if I lower this means that the fuel is gonna burn for a longer period of time. So it's gonna burn and be producing more temperature over time. If I lower this even more, like this, now it's gonna take even longer to burn off this fuel. So probably even some of it is gonna start getting lifted by the flames, and it's still gonna continue burning. So if we go here under the inform display, if I disable the smoke and the fire, you can see that most of the fuel is still here. So it gets lifted in the air and it continues burning. So this depletion is way too low. So I'm gonna set it back to maybe 0.8. I don't know why I find some satisfaction in just setting these to a value a bit different than the defaults. But I gotta show you how it works in both ways. Right, and then if we go back to the pressure and start adding a bit more pressure, it's gonna start expanding as it burns, and it's gonna get more explosive. Not that explosive with pressure of 10. Let's try 100. Slightly more explosive. Let's try 1000. Oh yeah. Alright, yeah, you gotta be careful not to run out of RAM if you do this. So that's a bit, maybe a bit too explosive. But it's also interesting. So that's a bit too much. Let's lower it to 100. Alright, and there is this parameter here, the smothering. So in Phoenix, there used to be a more complex formula that said when a fuel voxel can actually burn, when burning can occur in a voxel. So it was about the sum of the amount of fuel and the amount of smoke. And if this amount in a voxel exceeded 1, then this voxel could not burn. So here I excluded the smoke from the entire thing. So now it's a bit simpler, because otherwise it was only for the devoted that would actually know this hidden formula. Or if you, I don't even remember, it should probably have been in the docs side, but anyway, I felt like it should be a bit simpler. So now it's only about the amount of fuel in one voxel. So this means that if a voxel contains fuel above 1, then it's not going to be burning. So for example, I can try choking the fire with just smothering the fire with emitting more fuel. So by default, yeah, check this out. So it's not emitting even 1. So by default, it's emitting 0.75 just because of that. So if I start emitting like 6 units of fuel into each voxel, now I'm gonna make it harder for fuel to actually burn out. So less of the voxels are gonna get ignited until just their stuff gets mixed in the simulation, gets transferred to neighboring voxels, and gets reduced over time by the simulation. So this is gonna make, basically it's gonna make the fire burn only on the periphery. So let me even try reducing this. So if I lower this to 0.1 or 0.1, now it's gonna be even harder for the inner fire voxels to burn. So it's gonna, the flames are first gonna engulf just these more blurred edges of the fuel that have less fuel in them. Or even I can go even more extreme and reduce it to 0.01. And so this is one way to for example, like get a ball of fuel that only has the fire crawling on its surface, but it's gonna take some time to penetrate to the inside. Let's see if what I'm talking about actually really happens, or if I'm just imagining it. So let's show the intersection. Let's create a new intersector, and here it is. So maybe I should move it a bit to the, or try just crossing the sphere with it, so it's gonna be more visible, something like that. Yeah, right. So here it is. It's gonna just crawl on the surface, and it's gonna take more time to get to the core of the fuel cloud. Let's hide the intersection again. I think that I showed almost all of the options. So the next thing is that as it burns, it's gonna create some smoke, and that's one of the things. So now you see that the fuel is purple, the smoke is gray. So for example, we could tell it to create a different color for the smoke. We could make it, oh, it's gonna recalculate it again, but maybe it's slightly brighter. Yeah, but let's make it green. It's going to recalculate it again because now it's going to have to advect the color through the sim. And yeah, here is the green color, or it could create less dense smoke. Like this. But yeah, this is not very interesting. The other way, it was a more nice looking balance between the smoke and the temperature. So yeah, something like this. And now basically these are all of the fuel and the burning options. Oh yeah, and here's the buoyancy. Yeah. Let's not forget about this. So I can make the fuel rise or fall. That's an interesting effect. I might run out of VRAM if it continues falling like this though. Okay, let's stop it. Yeah, here it is. And also here the green is mixing with the purple. Hey, I just I just want to check something more. So what if I raise the pressure a little? So not gonna go too far on the timeline. Just want to see how far can I go with this kind of effect. Now just the velocity manages to draw the fire. The fire tries to rise up. That's how the temperature buoyancy works. But as the fuel drops down, it involves the fire and starts pulling it downwards. Nice. Okay, yeah. So the next thing is, how do you actually render this thing? Because now in the viewport it looks like this. In the earlier versions of Zenith, it was still not possible to get a shaded look of the fuel, so it didn't have shadows initially. Then Jonas from Space Office VFX and from the Movie Rabbit Hole YouTube channel, he had this idea that it was very easy to actually get some shading on the fuel if you just emitted a little density with the fuel emitter. So if you don't do this, if you just go with the default settings, if you want to render this, if you export it to VDB or render it in a renderer, then you're gonna have to probably either map the fuel and the fuel to the density of the renderer, or the smoke to the density of the renderer. So you might have to choose between those, or you might have to like combine them with a texture map. So for example, like the Phoenix grid texture, you could read the fuel in one of the textures and the density in another textures, and then combine them and then plug all of that as the smoke in the renderer. So it's gonna be a bit more complex. I'm not gonna be diving too deep in this rendering stuff right now, because I think that Jonas's solution is the simplest one. So you can see this in the viewport, you can use it to tune the simulation, but once you're done, you might just actually enable the density. I'm a bit too far on the timeline right now, though, so let me just go back once I've simulated it and verified that it works properly. Right, so now it also emits density. It might even be a bit thinner. depending on the way that you want it to look. So this is gonna be just more compatible with the other renderers. And here in the Inferno display, you can just disable the view. So you could use Zenith's view preview if you're gonna capture the viewport and if you're gonna use type preview just from the viewport. But otherwise, this method is gonna be a bit more robust and it's gonna work with external renderers more easily, especially because like it's difficult for a renderer to have two separate channels for density. So to have just the density and the fuel representing smoke at the same time. So if they have different colors, it has to figure out where and how to shade the different voxels in different colors. So it's gonna be easier here if I just emit it like this, if I just tell the view emitter to emit color. And just for the sake of being just continuing the way that we went with the initial setup, let me just make it purple again. But eventually you could use just any color and it's gonna start mixing with the color that the burning produces. And I might just, the fuel was 0.75 initially, I think. Yeah, then we increased it and I didn't decrease it. So that's why it got so thick. But yeah, maybe I should lower this. You can just set this to whatever value fits your setup the best. So I'm gonna use just a slightly lower value below 1. And now this way, all of this is actually emitted into the density channel, so the fuel is still there, it's still burning, but is not visible anymore here in the viewport just specifically, but this way it's gonna be a bit easier for external renderers to understand what's actually going on. Alright, and if we continue this simulation, now the burning is gonna start producing more of the green color. I should have just let the timeline play so that we could see what's going on, and eventually I would be able to hit escape before it gets too far. And yeah, here's the green color from the burning. And now this thing can be exported to VDB, so rendered with RNode. And I also saw that Octane that the Octane guys came up with rendering for Inferno in their beta, and I think that they might have already officially added support in their official builds for Zenith. So renderer support is coming. So the Corona guys are also working on it, and I know that the Redshift guys are working, and the V-Ray guys should eventually also come up with support for just native rendering of Zenith volumes. So basically that's it for the fuel and burning. I hope that this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, just please leave me a comment. I might do another video with a bit more information on how to do different kind of setups that include fuel and burning, but these are the basics. So I hope that this would be able to get you started, and thanks guys for watching, and see you in the next episode.